guys, thanks for the waiting. Well, this is part 2 of What If Kamen Rider Para DX was in RWBY. So let's start. Chapter 3, Pilot Part 2. First Person POV 3 days. It's been 3 days since I've woken up in this forest. 3 days since I first found the gas hat gear duel. And 3 days since my first, and, despite how short it was, second battles. Since then I had found a rather large bush that was growing what looked to be strawberries on it as both a hiding place for when I sleep and a place I could turn to for quick food. As luck would have it, that very bush was growing near a small stream that I could use for drinking water, so I had been able to survive for a while. I also managed to get a good look at myself in the water. And hoo boy! I am nothing like I used to be. Instead of flat, shoulder-length chestnut hair with olive green eyes, my hair had changed to become a short, spiky, primarily bright red mess with twinges of my hair sticking up and a deep blue in color, along with 2 of them jutting out like antennae. These 2 could reach past my neck if I were to stretch them out. Not that it mattered what I did to them anyway, after all they would just flip right back into place. My right eye was now the same bright red as my hair, whereas my left eye was a cerulean blue. I also took notice of the clothes I was wearing, as they weren't the pajamas I had worn when I went to bed on the night before I found myself on Remnant. I had on a simple black t-shirt with denim blue jeans and a pair of black shoes with yellow laces and white soles and trim lines that followed the outside of the laces and connected from the laces to the soles in 3 different places. Over my shirt I had on a crimson jacket with blue semi-long sleeves that went down to just below my elbows. Around my neck was a simple black string necklace that had a small wooden tiki hanging on it. Overall, I think Coco would probably murder me for looking like this. That thought would have brought a chuckle out of me if not for my frustration at this very moment. I was rapping my fingertips against a tree trunk in annoyance as I glared at the woods around me. The source of my frustration? Why, the very thing I was looking for, the very thing that was missing from this scenario. Where the hell are all the Grimm? That's right, I had somehow scared off the Grimm. At first I was wondering if they were just waiting for me to drop my guard and actually slept outside my little hovel for an hour or so before going back into it because of the cold, but not a single sign of the Grimm could be found. Without the Grimm, I'm short on EXP, and, without EXP, I cannot level up. With that in mind, I had originally stayed there and hoped that by the 4th day the Grimm would be liable to attack me again, yet nope, not a single hide nor hair of them. Either they're outright avoiding me or something else is attracting them away. Let's just hope it's the former cause if it's the latter. I have no godly idea what could attract that many Grimm. And not knowing a situation is worse than knowing the bad of a situation, so in a grunt of frustration I punched the tree I was leaning on before turning to the bush and grabbing some of the berries off of it for later consumption. I had made a makeshift basket out of some twigs and vines that I found lying around earlier on and used it for carrying any extra berries for when I had to travel, and this was one of those times. As I put the berries I had just picked into it, picked up the gas hat gear duel and pocketed it into my jacket before I headed south. My frustration started when I found out I could kill the Grimm insanely faster as the fighter gamer rather than the puzzle gamer, as that just literally broke my soul to find out I wasted all that time and effort for the same results. That then lead to my hunting spree on the Grimm, which allowed me to reach level 18 with Knockout Fighter in a single day, but that's when it all went downhill. On the next day, the Grimm stopped hunting me down and it became harder and harder to level up Perfect Puzzle, though not impossible as I got it up to level 14, but just barely. It was also around that time that I found out I could only chain 2 power UPS at a time until I had hit level 10 as the puzzle gamer. Now I can do 3, the max that was known to be done by Parrot when he used the form, yet I saw 3 more locked chain slots whenever I was transformed. As I trekked across the forest my mind began to wander on the life I had essentially been robbed from. My mother, who had been working herself to the point of death to make sure her kids were taken care of. My older sister and brother that did everything they could to cause what they called twinsanity upon me. My younger sister, who could probably turn a Nevermore into a teddy bear by just looking at it and whose birthday I had missed. And my best friend, who would give me her support even when I felt all I ever did was make things worse. I'm not sure I can go back to all that, but at the very least I can try and not mess this world up. After all, I was found with the gas hat gear duel, so maybe there was a reason for me being here? Whatever it was, though, would have to wait. I have some levels to grind. Sometime later dash. It's been a few hours since I started my travel south and I've yet to see a single Grimm. This is concerning me greatly as that only ever happened when the Grimm found newer, more vulnerable prey to kill. That thought scares me, but I can't really help anyone if A, I don't know where they are, and B, I let the fear get to me. Even if the Grimm sensed and ignored my own fears, the stress of the fear itself doesn't do well for one's health. I had to get my mind distracted on something else. Sadly, I found the perfect thing all too soon. The Gas Hat Gear Duel. In the show, the GGD, and I'm going to refer to it as that from now on, couldn't be used by any human without succumbing to a lethal amount of the Bugster virus that in itself should explain the pain I felt, but it doesn't explain the other inconsistencies. When Parrot transformed into either Puzzle Gamer or Fighter Gamer, he was automatically level 50, yet I had to start out as level 2. Granted, I couldn't start at level 1 because there is no level 1 form for either game, but regardless I shouldn't have had to level up at all, and let's not forget the fact that I lost the armor after being without the GGD for a few minutes. That never happened to Parrot. Then we get into the inconsistencies, with each game starting out with Perfect Puzzle. Parrot's Puzzle Gamer form could chain 3 power-ups at any given time and they lasted until he used a finisher or until he tried for a 4th power-up. I, on the other hand, could only chain 2 power-ups at once until I was level 10, with a time limit on the power-ups to boot, but once I hit level 40 I can chain a grand total of 6. That's quite a scary thought if Parrot could do that. And then we get into the crux of the inconsistencies. Knockout Fighter. As the Fighter Gamer, Parrot couldn't use power-ups, but instead gains power the more fired up for a fight he gets, thus negating the need for power-ups. Don't get me wrong, I can use the whole fired up power like him, but, on the other hand, I can use power-ups as Knockout Fighter, just 1 power-up, which is also on a timer, but still it left me to thinking as I asked myself just what else is different about this GGD than the original? I never really experiment with Knockout Fighter because of how fast I leveled up that form, but I know I feel more comfortable as the Puzzle Gamer as that form was more versatile and I've had more experience in it in the short few days I've used it. I also know that, while Knockout Fighter is more for immediate power, Perfect Puzzle has the potential to be the stronger of the 2 forms. My thoughts are cut short as I hear rustling in the bushes to my left as I continue to walk, only to stop and see what was making the noise as I pull the GGD out and put my basket of berries down. A pair of Grimm larger and stockier than the Beowulfs lumbered out growling cautiously as they stared me down. These Grimm had spikes across their backs and arms and bony white masks that covered their entire top half of their heads with red designs that were more intricate than the Beowulfs. A pair of Ursa miners had made the mistake of appearing, just what I was looking for. A smirk danced across my face for a moment before I turned the dial to Perfect Puzzle and received the confirmation noise for its selection along with the familiar techno music playing in loop. Perfect Puzzle. What's the next stage? As the power-ups began to dot the surrounding area, the smirk I wore replaced itself with a look of curiosity as the Grimm both flinched, with one of them even taking a step back even though they never took their eyes off me to look at the discs that now littered the forest. No, I realized as I started to glare at them, not at me. They were looking at the GGD as if they had recognized it. That means these weren't younglings and that I had to eliminate them quickly before they got away. With a call of henshin, I pressed the buttons to transform. Duel up! The holographic image of the Puzzle Gamer appeared in front of me and passed over me, covering my body with the armor as it did so and transforming me into RWBY Puzzle Gamer once more as I placed the GGD into its holster. Get the glory in the chain. Perfect Puzzle. With that done, I ran at them as the Grimm I had hunted had done to me. The ursa that had stepped back charged at me, standing on its hind legs as it neared striking range with a paw raised to attack me. Big mistake as I slid under its legs and, quite literally, kicked its arse. The kick sent it tumbling onto its belly, but it wasn't enough to do much damage to it as it got back up and tried to turn to me, only to find a golden-soled boot to the face as I launched a short, flying kick at it. This sent it rolling to the side, but its partner finally decided it wasn't going to fight alone as the Grimm charged straight for me with a swipe aimed at me. I jumped back quick enough to dodge it, but hadn't noticed the Grimm I had knocked before come at me from behind and swiped my back, which sent me flying to the side. Just like I figured, these weren't young Grimm, they knew what they were up against and attacked accordingly. If I was going to walk out of this relatively unharmed, I'd have to work fast. I spotted a red disc with the image of a rider flexing and immediately rolled for it, narrowly dodging a double-pronged swipe from the ursas. As I rushed to the power-up, I cocked a fist back and punched straight through it after reaching it. Muscular! I felt my muscles tightening up as newfound strength filled me. Turning to the ursas which were lumbering towards me from different directions, I smirked as I got into a ready stance. Okay, let's see how you boys like picking on someone your own size? I asked rhetorically before punching one in the gut, causing it to stumble, and used the momentum to slam the back of my heel into the side of the other's face, sending it spiraling into a tree. The fact that neither one died in those hits was a testament to how sturdy these Grimm were. As I prepared to grab the GGD to perform my finishing blow, I heard gunfire from behind coming straight for me. What in the world dash was all I could get out before getting flung by a yellow blur into the air. Liquefaction. And straight into a liquefaction power-up. My body melted as it splashed into the bushes that were under me. Granted, this time wasn't all that bad as I had learned I could flex my body to move around. It was still annoying as hell whenever I didn't want to be liquidated. Monkey humpas, what the hell was that? I asked, but got an answer as I heard a distinctly female voice call out, "Nailed it." My eyes went wide for a moment as I tried to scuttle to where the voice came from. Meanwhile, as the fight started dash. Third-person POV dash. Yang Xiaolong, a young woman with curly blonde hair and lavender eyes wearing a tan jacket with golden brown piping and short, puffy sleeves with black cuffs that feature 2 gold buttons, a low-cut yellow crop top with a black emblem of a burning heart on the left side of her chest in black, and a pair of black mini-shorts, was having the time of her life, being able to almost literally fly through the air as she continued to propel herself with her shotgun gauntlets, Ember Celica, after being flung off of Beacon Cliff for her initiation. To her, the rush of the air and adrenaline was throwing her into an excited flurry that she thought lasted forever. Sadly, it only lasted for about a few seconds before she realized she was about to hit the ground. "Whoa," she muttered as she used her gauntlets to keep herself airborne for as long as she could before hitting the ground, though she felt she had hit something on the way down but couldn't make out what it was on account of her sunglasses and how fast she was going. She managed to slow down her momentum enough, however, that a single roll was enough to stop her as she gave a quick "nailed it" in celebration of her small victory. Now that she was firmly on solid ground, however, she had a new dilemma. She had to find a partner in fast, only then could she retrieve the artifact and return to Beacon as a full-fledged student. She looked around her surroundings and called out to anyone that was listening to try and spot any signs of life, but only found shrubbery and trees. Until she heard some rustling in the bushes, that is. First-person POV dash. I peeked out to see what was going on and saw, to my utter and absolute surprise, that Yang was actually here in the forest. Now that I knew she was real as well, I could finally deduce just when the hell I was on Remnant. Okay, so, judging by her outfit, I started thinking to myself during my examination, she's still in Beacon or close to it. She's also got both arms, so it's way before the battle for Beacon. And she's calling out to people despite knowing if anyone is actually right here. Which means, my eyes go wide as the pieces began to fall into place. Which means this was the initiation episode. Oh crap, I am royally screwed now, I thought in a panic. The reason for my panic is the fact that I have been messing with time since I got here by hunting the Grimm. I had messed up big time. I was in so much of a panic that I almost didn't realize the liquefaction power-up was wearing off, which caused the bush I was in to rustle some. And Yang was on her way to where I was. I nearly froze until I heard the growl of one of the ursas I was fighting from earlier behind me. Oh dear God, why? I asked myself in my mind, frozen in terror. Third-person POV dash. Is someone there? She asked in the direction of the noise. She followed the sounds of the rustling to a nearby bush that was behind her and peeked over the top of it in morbid curiosity as she asked, "RWBY, is that you?" Her reply was a standing ursa minor that growled menacingly at her, but she could look at it this way, she got her answer. "Nope," she said as she made a popping sound with the P. Rolling to the side, she avoided the ursa's swing and bought enough time to arm her weapons, but it also put herself in the line of fire of a second ursa as it jumped over the bushes at her. Backflipping away allowed her to once again avoid being hit. With one of the ursas charging at her, she cocked a fist back and unleashed a shotgun-powered punch into the beast and sent it flying backwards, and with the second one coming after her she landed an uppercut on it and followed with a quick spin kick to send it reeling next to its partner. "You guys wouldn't happen to have seen a girl in a red hood, would you?" she asked the Grimm as they were recovering. One of them stood on its hind legs and roared at her before swiping at her. "You could just say no," she said as she hopped back from the first swipe and narrowly dodged the second with a backflip. With a laugh, she started to taunt the massive beasts by saying, "Geez, you two couldn't hit the broadside of a BA dash," before stopping as she watched a lone strand of hair floated to the ground, her hair. First-person POV dash. I couldn't help but silently cheer on who was, to me, the most likable character in the series as she fought the ursas, though I did have the initial thoughts of her being a kill-stealing little firecracker since I weakened them. Then I saw the hair falling down and just facepalmed at the bad luck these two had. "Oh crap baskets," I whispered to myself, "you two are in for it now." Third-person POV dash. Yang, for lack of a better word, was furious. She had worked all morning to get her hair just the way she liked it and these things had to go and ruin it. As her eyes closed and opened back up, gone was the lavender irises in favor of a bright and burning red to symbolize a burning, raging fire of hatred she felt for these ursa. Said Grimm could only glance at each other in confusion as they did not know what she was capable of. They would soon learn that this was a big mistake. "You monsters!" she roared at the soon-to-be-dead Grimm as her hair lit aflame, and what came next went by as fast as it had come. With her weapon's recoil, she dashed up to the ursa that had dared to touch her hair and landing a single jab on it to disorient it before nailing it with an uppercut and sending it flying. In a flash, she sped up to it and unleashed a flurry of shotgun-powered punches that sent it straight through several trees and thus ending its life. The second ursa had done its best to run up to the strange woman who had quickly dealt with its partner but had been too late as she turns to the now standing beast and gloated, "What? You want some too?" The ursa only had time to roar before a sickening slash of a blade against flesh is heard. First-person POV dash. I had seen her pull that off, but to see it from an angle that the show could never give. It was spectacular. She was incredible with that kind of raw firepower, though scary when I thought about it. I never wanted to get on her bad side, Kamen Rider Para DX or not. Then I saw the ursa go down by being stabbed in the back with a pistol that had a blade pointing down from the barrel and a ribbon tied to the stock. I turned my head to see if my suspicions were true and, sure enough, they were. Holding the other end of the ribbon was a fair-skinned young girl with amber eyes and long black hair wearing purple eyeshadow, a black buttoned vest with coattails and a single silver button on the front. Underneath this was a white, sleeveless, high-necked, crop undershirt, white shorts with a zipper on the front of each leg, black low-heeled boots, and full stockings with a color gradation of black to purple at her ankles. There was no doubt about it, this was Blake Belladonna in all her Season 1 glory, but something seemed off about her. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I could tell it was on the tip of my tongue as she ripped the gun out of the corpse's back. Then it hit me as I looked at where her bow normally would be. Instead of her black bow-tied bow on her head, her faunus cat ears were right there in plain sight for everyone and their grandmother to see. What the hell? I asked myself and thought, she never took the bow off before she revealed her ears to Sunday. Oh, this is bad, really bad. If Blake was changed, then what else has changed because of me? And how did she get changed? I didn't have long to contemplate, however. I had to get out of here before I was spotted. I slowly crawled my way out of the bushes towards a speeding up disc when I snapped a twig under my heel. Blake was the one who responded to the noise with "Who's out there?" Oh crap baskets. Third-person POV dash. The now ex-ursa had hit the ground revealing Blake Belladonna, a fellow initiate classmate of Yang's, who had killed the Grimm by throwing her weapon into its spine before tugging on the ribbon and ripping it out, catching it just as it reached her hand before she extended the blade and putting it back in her holster blade. Smiling, she looked at the blonde who only smirked back and said, "I could have taken him." That may be, Blake started off, but I'm not too sure about our uninvited guest. Yang could only look at her in confusion as she looked around and asked, "Wait, you mean there really was someone here?" "There is someone here." I can't tell where, but Blake was interrupted by the sound of a twig breaking. She looked to where the noise came from and called out, "Who's out there?" Speeding up. Instead of an answer of the typical sort, however, what she got was a yellow blur zipping by them and causing Young to spin like a top for a few moments. Blake looked to her now partner to find that her blonde friend was now dizzy as her eyes had been replaced with swirls. "Blake, did you catch the number of that bullhead pilot?" She joked as she shook her head to clear her equilibrium and regained her orientation. Blake could only smile as she thought to herself, "This is going to be a fun time at Beacon, I just know it." First person POV dash. As I was running, empowered by the speeding up disc, I was scolding myself, "You stupid idiot, you nearly got caught. Your only saving grace was that damned power-up." I sighed to myself as I continued to openly contemplate on everything that had happened. Okay, so it looks like I was right and this actually is the initiation test, but there's some key differences, the first of which is how Young landed, which I can attest to by being slammed into a liquefaction power-up, and then there's Blake's bow or lack thereof. Just what else has changed? I couldn't contemplate any more on it as I stop and get distracted by a sight I was more than glad to see. In one of the few clear openings in the forest was a large pack of Beowulfs with an alpha Beowulf seemingly surrounding someone or something. Alright, a lucky break. They're Beowulfs, but hey, I'll take what I can. Wait. Who's that? I asked myself as I noticed someone in the center of the pack. She was a pale-skinned young girl with pale blue eyes and long white hair pulled back into an off-center bun tail and pinned with an icicle-shaped tiara with a thigh-length strapless dress with faint color gradation from white to pale blue at the hem. No doubt about it, this was Weiss Schnee, but why were my internal alarm bells ringing? I looked behind me to see a lone tree in the clearing, and then it hit me like a speeding train. I had to get out of here before it gotcha. I heard someone say before the unavoidable happened. "Oh crap!" I yelled as I rolled out of the way of a trail of fire that hits the tree before I ran back into the forest to avoid the incoming forest fire. "These girls are out to get me." I yelled knowing I would be drowned out by the howls of the panicking Beowulfs as I continued to run away. Third person POV dash. Two girls were running up a hill to escape the consuming flames that now threatened to engulf the forest and stopped only to catch their breath and look at the destruction that was caused. One of them was Weiss Schnee, heiress of the Schnee Dust Company, and the person responsible for the actual flames. Her travel acquaintance, a fair-skinned young girl with silver eyes and black hair that fades to dark red at the tips cut in an asymmetrical bob, wearing a long-sleeved thick black blouse with a high collar and red trim on the sleeves, a black waist cincher with red lacing up the front, and a black skirt with red trim, and a pair of thick black stockings and black combat boots with red laces, red trim around the top and red soles, was right behind her before looking back at the rising billows of smoke and turning back to her partner. "What was that?" she asked in frustration. "That should have been easy." Weiss began to grow impatient with her so-called partner's antics as she glared hard at the girl and said, "Well, perhaps if you had exercised even the slightest amount of caution with the placement of your strikes, I wouldn't have set the forest on fire." At this, Ruby scoffed at the girl and was about to retort before she could hear a small, strange sound, a sound that began to grow louder. "Hey, wait. Do you hear that?" she asked the heiress, whose only reply was to try and suggest that it was the sound of the flames burning down below. No, not that. It sounds like buzzing," she muttered as it continued to grow louder. Weiss was now starting to internally panic as she could hear it. "Now that you mention it, I believe I do hear something akin to that." They started to look around as the noise grew to the point of being painful on their ears before it suddenly stopped. Ruby was the first to break the now eerie silence. "Weiss?" "Yes? What is it? Do you have a feeling that something really bad is going to happen any second now?" As she said this, a pair of very large, glowing orange eyes appeared in the shadows of the trees behind her. Having noticed this, Weiss was visibly shaking as she nodded her head but couldn't say anything as a shriek had startled both the girls along with the sound of wood being cut down following suit. As they saw what caused this, both girls screamed as loud as their lungs could carry their voices. Chapter 4, Pilot Part 3. Third Person POV dash. A pair of adults were standing at the edge of Beacon Cliff, which overlooked the forest, looking over their scrolls when one of them, a middle-aged woman that has very light blonde hair tied back in a bun with a curl hanging down the right side of her face, and bright green eyes wearing thin ovular glasses, dangling teal earrings that matched the hanging pendant on her collar, a white long-sleeved, pleated top that has a wide keyhole neckline and gauntlet cuffs that flare in pleats at the wrist. With her lower body covered by a black high-waisted pencil skirt with bronze buttons and black-brown stockings, walked to the other, a middle-aged man with tousled silver hair and thin brown eyes, a light complexion and sharp facial features wearing shaded glass spectacles and a small, purple, cross-shaped pin on the cowl around his neck, an unzipped black suit over a buttoned vest and green shirt while carrying a simple dull metal gray cane. Our last pair has been formed, sir, the woman, Glinda Goodwitch, started off as she tapped her scroll screen to zone in on the footage she was watching. Nora Valkyrie and Lai Ren. Poor boy, I can't possibly imagine those two getting along. Still, he's probably better off than Ms. Nikos and Ms. Xiaolong. Was the only reply from the man, Ajban. I don't care what his transcripts say, Glinda ranted, that John Fellow is not ready for this level of combat. And what of Ms. Xiaolong? Ajban asked, surely Ms. Belladonna isn't that bad of an influence despite her being an ex-White Fang member. That's just it, Professor, it's not Ms. Belladonna that has me worried, Glinda responded as she typed up something on her scroll which showed the footage of something golden flying straight past Young and Blake. It's what did that which has me concerned for her health. At this, Ajban's normally stoic face had its black eyebrows trying to hide in his hair, a true sign of emotion if Glinda had seen one. They were both interrupted from their musings as terrified screams filled the speakers of their scrolls. Ajban nearly dropped his cane trying to find the video feed as Glinda searched through hers until they found the sources. Ruby and Weiss were in deeper trouble than they thought was possible. Glinda, he started as he got a grip of his cane again, a serious and grim expression dawning his face, we need to get them out of there. But what about Dash? Glinda started before the headmaster interrupted her. We cannot afford to lose Ms. Rose under any circumstances. With a dejected sigh, as she hated doing things that were considered cheating, she agreed he was right as they hadn't seen anything like what was chasing the girls before. Very well, Professor. I'll have a bullhead prepped for takeoff. Meanwhile Dash. First person POV Dash. For the umpteenth time in my time on Remnant, I found myself asking why the hell am I here? For a recap, let's consider the following. I'm being chased by monstrous creatures capable of killing humans in an instant. I was nearly killed by one or more of the main cast members of one of my favorite series. I found a fully functioning GGD sitting right next to me when I first woke up here that nearly killed me when I used it. Oh, and let's not forget that since I'm in the past I am drastically altering the future by existing here. So again, I asked myself, why the hell am I here? I was still recovering from running like hell away from being roasted to death by a misplaced strike from Weiss as I was contemplating why I had to go through all this. There's no way any sane person would willingly put themselves through this, so why me? I sat down next to a tree to catch my breath as my panting finally started slowing down. My body was aching and I was dizzy and dreary as hell, and what's worse is I had one of my favorite characters turn me into a puddle of goo literally. I was at my wit's end. I was tempted to dehension and just let whatever monster just waltz up to me and send me into the sweet, blissful embrace of death just to escape this madness. There was nothing here worth it for me, nothing for me to earn or gain in return for the embarrassment, harassment, and constant life endangerment. But that all changed as soon as I heard a pair of screams of people I knew were not easy to scare. My exhaustion forgotten, I stood back up and looked up to the hill where I thought the screams came from as it was the only overpass high enough to still see the flames. Weiss and Ruby were in trouble if the flashes of white and red were anything to go by. After seeing that, I looked around for a power-up I could use and found the perfect one to reach them in time as I punched it. Speeding up. As I dashed up the hillside, I kept thinking to myself that I had to get to them fast enough, that I had to keep them safe. Hold on, Ruby, Weiss, I said to myself as I ran as fast as my empowered legs could carry me. Help SA Kamen. With Blake and Yang Dash. The partners were following a dirt path that was leading them north as they discussed the recent happenings. I'm telling ya, Blake, the blonde started, that was an alien. And I'm telling you that it wasn't. Aliens don't exist, Blake retorted with a mirthful smirk without glancing at her partner. Yang grinned at her funnest friend before asking, then how else do you explain a yellow blur that can outspeed my little sister, whose semblance is literally speed? Maybe it's another student who has her semblance. At this, Yang crossed her arms under her bust and puffed her cheeks in annoyance as she looked away from the raven-haired girl. You're no fun, you know, she said to Blake, who merely rolled her eyes and giggled softly before replying. Keep telling yourself that. Yang took this a challenge as she smirked at the cat faunus. Then how about you prove it? 100 lean says that thing was from another world. Blake glanced down in contemplation as she tapped her chin before deciding on what to do. I think I can lose that much. She started before turning to her partner. Okay, Euro dash, she tried to finish, but was interrupted by a pair of faint screaming that made her eyes go wide as she recognized the voices as RWBY and Weiss's. Due to her ears, she was able to hear the voice despite being so far away, but there was no mistaking one of the first people she met at Beacon. Oh no! She whispered in fear. Yang saw her partner's sudden distress and tried to pry into it by asking what was going on, but was left behind as the young girl ran off, leaving Yang to chase after her and calling out to her, Hey wait, what's wrong, kitty cat? It's RWBY, she's in trouble. That was all Yang needed to hear as she used Ember Celica to catch up with the faunus, an expression of seriousness seldomly seen on her face as she asked, Where is she? Blake merely ran faster towards an overpass with smoke coming from behind it as she gave her answer, She's with Weiss, just follow me. With RWBY and Weiss dash. Weiss, duck. With that one warning, the Schneearis was able to avoid a catastrophic slash before using her glyphs to propel her away from her attacker. The creature blurred before appearing in front of the one who had warned its prey of its attack before swiping at the young girl who narrowly avoided the attack in a burst of petals that were speeding to catch up to Weiss. RWBY, what even is that thing? The Yaris asked her impromptu partner who could only shake her head. If you don't know what it is, then how should I know? They both glanced back at their attacker, a mantis like Grimm of giant proportions easily outclassing a Deathstalker in pure size, its body a pitch black with white bone armor along the top of the abdomen as wing casings covered in jagged red designs and entirely covering the thorax, wings as gray as smoke and tattered as decay cloth, its arms holding two bone-white jagged sickle blades on each arm with a single long claw at the joint where the blades bent, mandibles that split off from the top, left and right sides of a supposed eating cavity and angry orange eyes that faded to red near the head with white specks eerily like an iris that would always stare at whomever looks at it. This monstrosity was as terrifying as it was formidable as it could keep up with its prey with relative ease, swiping and slashing at them continuously in what one would assume were vain attempts at killing the two girls. They bounced back and forth around its limbs, hitting it with both blades and dust-based attacks to no avail as the beast would be unscathed no matter what they did. With a crackling shriek, it lashed once more, only this time it landed a blow. Weiss screamed in pain as she felt her left leg cut in two places, one just below her calf and one in the back of the thigh just above her knee, severing her muscles as she fell to and collapsed on the forest floor. As she held her leg in desperation to prevent the pain from shooting through her body, she couldn't help but feel the shock and horror creeping up her spine as the thought of a Grimm being strong enough to be able to damage someone enough to override their aura was an alien concept, yet here it was, a creature that did just that and to her own now useless leg at that. Weiss! RWBY called out to the Yaris before unleashing a barrage of bullets upon the beast in hopes of distracting it long enough to reach her. As it turned to her, she used her semblance to zip towards Weiss and tried to cover her with her own body as the creature returned its attention to their current spot. Both girls flinched as it gave another crackling shriek and raised one of its arms, ready to claim its kills. Perfect critical combo. As it turned to the noise, a vortex of gold and blue slammed into its chest, sending it flying through several trees as the girls finally saw what was going on. Wah! What was that? Weiss asked in utter shock. Whatever it was. RWBY started with a shake of her head. It bought us some time to get help. Picking up the Aris bridal style, the silverite girl started to run as fast as she could down the hill, unintentionally in the direction of Blake and Yang. Moments ago dash. First person POV dash. I ran towards the clearing where RWBY and Weiss were when the fires started in order to get a lay of the land and see where they went. but what I saw was cut down trees and broken branches all over the place. I had to act fast as my speed boost was running out, but managed to spot one along with a muscular power-up. Deciding that now was not the time to be looking a gifted horse in the mouth, I broke both power-ups in a single punch. Speeding up. Muscular. With my speed renewed and strength boosted, I followed the destruction in time to see something ready to strike RWBY, who was trying to shield a down Weiss with her own body. This thing was going to learn that no one hurts the adorable little biscuit while I'm around. Grabbing the GGD, I pulled it out just enough that it triggers the release confirmation, but before it announced its removal was when I immediately used my free hand to turn the dial to its default position and back to perfect puzzle before slamming it back into the holster, all before it had a chance to call out Kamwaza. Dual Gashet. Blue energy once more formed around my foot as I ran towards the thing that was trying to kill the girls before I jumped as high as I could in a high jump kick and began to spin like like a drill burrowing into the ground. Perfect critical combo. My speed and momentum allowed me to slam into the beast, whatever it was, while my strength boost pushed it back quite a few yards away. How many trees just died from the collision, I will never know. Eventually, all good things come to an end as both me and my new opponent slammed into the ground in an explosion of dirt, leaves and dust. Rolling off, I turned to try and get a good look at the monster that tried to hurt RWBY, and holy crap did I wish I didn't. It looked like a mantis that got steroids shoved into it, hit by Rita Repulsa's staff wand, and then hit by a touch of necromantic magic just for kicks. What the hell kinda hole did this nightmare crawl out of? I thought to myself before a rather unpleasant thought crossed my mind that I didn't want to see and made me have to force down an awkward blush. On second thought, I don't want to know. The Kamakiri asterisk, as I'm calling it, got back up and fully recovered before flying straight at me in a blur of black and white, swiping at me with its sickles as it closed in. With a hop, backskip, and a full-on backflip, I managed to avoid its initial attacks before it landed a blow and sent me flying into a tree. My health was showing a whole 25% taken by the damage. D-damn. This thing hits like a train. I summed up in my head, but before I could think on a strategy, I noticed two things. The first was that my speed boost was almost over, and the second was a violet disc with the image of a rider giving off a bright light, the emission power-up. Jumping off the tree and unintentionally headbutting the Kamakiri, I flipped over the bug and crashed onto the ground before trying to race to the power-up, only to get swiped away and taking another 15% of health off me. Damn it! I cursed my luck at the situation in front of me, if I could just reach it. Wait, I know, I can just summon it to me. Holding my hand out to the power-up, I willed it to move to me as I gripped the air and pulled toward me, causing the power-up to move with my hand. But the Kamakiri was having none of that as it effectively slapped me and made me send the power-up flying into a tree, shattered and destroyed. D-damn it! I cursed loudly, seeing my health drop another 20%, what's it going to take to beat you? My only answer was a crackling shriek as it flew at me once more, but this time I didn't have any speed boost to keep up. Meanwhile dash. Third person dash. Yang and Blake had only barely made it to the foot of the hill when they noticed a red flurry of rose petals flying towards them. Recognizing it as RWBY's semblance, Yang started to wave her little sister down and expected to see Weiss running behind her trying to catch up. What she saw, however, was the supposed Ice Queen in the arms of her partner clutching her left leg in pain, which was bleeding badly in 2 spots. "RWBY, are you okay?" was the first thing Yang concerningly asked before continuing to assault her sister with another question, what happened to her? RWBY shook her head, distraught at the situation before her, before replying, I don't know. She set Weiss gently on the ground for a moment and started to check on her leg, but there was this giant Grimm that attacked us and it did this to her. Yang looked skeptical, but Blake's eyes went wide as if remembering something horrible. What do I mean a Grimm did this to her? Yang asked in disbelief. No Grimm should be able to do that, and even if they did, her aura should be healing it up by now. I don't know, alright. RWBY screamed in frustration, all I know is what I saw happened and we need to help stop the bleeding, otherwise. Does anyone have a fire crystal? At this, everyone present looked at the raven-haired faunus in confusion before Weiss replied, I in my pee pouch. RWBY immediately opened it up and dug her hand into the container before pulling out a bright red gem with an orange shine to it. Here, Blake, she said as she handed it off to the girl who then moved to the heiress' injured leg. We'll need to cauterize the wounds, she started as she gripped the crystal in both hands. Once that's done, she'll be able to heal on her own but will still need medical support. With this, she snapped the crystal in two, a crackling noise being made as she did this before turning to Weiss and warning her, this is going to hurt a lot worse than the actual wound itself, but please, try to bear with it. Weiss looked at the faunus in disbelief before asking, why are you doing this? I mean, I'm a Schnee and my father's company has done inhumane and politically unsavory things to the faunus, but you, Weiss, have not personally done any of that, she retorted before continuing. The worst I've seen you do was badmouth a girl whom you had flung fire dusted by shaking a bottle and blaming her for causing it to explode, and try to act like an ungrateful brat. But I know what it feels like to be abandoned by someone you trusted, and I will not allow anyone to feel that way if I can help it, even you. After all, the sins of the parents are not inherited by the children. She moved the gem shards near the injury on her calf before warning her to brace herself and bite onto something. With that, Weiss merely grabbed Ruby's cloak, who tried to resist the action, and bit down on it after clumping it up just as Blake touched the two shards together to her injury. Screaming through the cloth as the burning pain shot through her body from her leg, Weiss couldn't help but think on what the faunus girl had said. The sins of the parents are not inherited by the children. Why is it, then, that I still feel guilty for what father has done? As she closes up the wound, Blake told the heiress that she was moving on to the next one before the shards run out of energy. Immediately so, she commits to the action and tries to, as quickly as possible, close up the wound with minimal pain. This failed if the muffled screams were anything to go by. Once both wounds were closed up and cleaned, she gathered the now cooled down shards and placed them back into Weiss' pouch. There. That will hold until we get you some real medical help, but we have to move now. Yang was the first to speak up. I say we get the hell out of here and back to Beacon. I don't care if we become huntresses or not right now. Weiss and Blake were in agreement, but Ruby, however, had other ideas. We have to find the temple. The others stared at her in disbelief, but, before any of them could complain to her about the idea, Ruby raised her hand to keep them at bay. Now hold on and just hear me out. The temple shouldn't be too far away from here, and it would be the most open spot I can think of away from the flames of the forest fire that we can send a signal from. If we do that and wait at the temple, someone is bound to find us there and help us back to Beacon. As she finished her explanation, all three girls looked at her in bemusement before thinking on her words in their own ways. After a few seconds, it was Weiss who spoke up first. Ruby, she started, that is actually a good idea. Yang looked at the heiress with an amused smirk on her face, but Blake eyed her with curiosity and skepticism yet held her tongue as she wanted to hear what the girl had to say. Look, I know you don't even like me, but you have to at least trust me when I say it's our best bet to get some distance on that thing, with the added bonus of at least some form of shelter. She turned to the red hood wearing girl and nodded. I say we go for the temple. That was all Blake needed as she gave a soft smile and nodded before turning to Yang, who simply shrugged her shoulders. If that thing's as dangerous as you two are saying, I'm not going to be much good, Yang stated. Besides, Blake and I were near the forest temple before she heard you two were in danger. Then, you mind leading the way? Ruby asked, blushing in embarrassment. Yang chuckled as she turned to her younger half-sibling. What happened, Rubes? You got lost on the way here? Yes. Fine by me. Let's get going. Ruby started to try and pick Weiss back up before she felt a heavy hand on her shoulder. Oh no you don't, Yang stated in a warning tone, you've done enough for a week carrying Ice Queen here as far as you did. Hey! said Ice Queen replied. But Ruby tried to rebut her sister's words before Blake interrupted her. No, Ruby. I'll carry her. If what Yang is saying means anything, you should focus on resting up. Turning around and crouching, Blake began to carry Weiss piggyback as she started down the hill. Yang turned to her sister with a concerned smile before asking if she needed a lift. I'm fine, Yang. Just shaken up. Chewed up, and spat back out. That doesn't sound fine, Rubes. Yang replied. I'm fine. I promise. With that, Yang shrugged and said alright, before following to catch up with Blake as Ruby ran after her towards the temple. First person POV dash. I screamed in pain as I was sent flying once more into a tree before narrowly missing a bone blade that embedded itself into the tree where I hit as I fell to the ground. Landing on one knee, I take a quick glance at my health to see it had dropped to 30% remaining. Damn it, I cursed at myself, I don't think I'll last much longer. I heard a snapping sound before running as fast as I could away from the kamakiri before it swiped at my back, sending me rolling onto the ground before smacking me into the air, taking 20% of my health with it. As I was sent flying, I couldn't help but think that this would be the end, that this would be where I get a game over. Until I hit something in my flight, something I never expected to hit. Liquefaction. My eyes went wide as I felt the familiar sensation of being melted into a puddle of goo as I landed in some bushes. The liquefaction power-up. Whatever merciful deity put that there. I silently prayed, thank you so much. I never thought in my life that I would be glad to be turned into a puddle. Looking around, I noticed the kamakiri was now looking around trying to find me. I had to act fast if I were to fully take advantage of this opportunity. I scuttled a little ways further into the woods and looked around for any power-up that would help me in this thing once and for all, but could only find the usual ones. That's when I found it, a silver disc with a picture of a rider standing tall and flexing as if with a new surge of energy, the recover power-up. With this, I can restore my health, but that won't be enough to even the odds. I needed a way to end this fight. The liquefaction power-up wore off as I was looking for another power-up, but a loud buzzing startled me out of my thoughts. Acting fast, I punched the silver disc and shattered it. Recover. I felt myself feeling rested and energized, as if I had slept for over 3 days and woke up in the best of moods. I looked at my health and noticed that, sure enough, it was now 100%. I didn't have long to react, however, as the buzzing was now really close before I rolled out behind a tree. It wasn't long before the kamakiri came barreling through and slicing down all the trees in its path before zipping right past me. As I peeked around the tree I was behind, I noticed it was just going in a straight line, a line headed straight where Ruby and Weiss fled. Ah, crap baskets. I cursed my luck at the situation. I need to keep that thing on me to keep them safe. Hey you, bug-eyed freak, over here. I taunted as I waved my arms and came out of my hiding spot. It turned around as it noticed me before flying straight at me with its claws raised. Yeah, I'm the one you're fighting. I called out as I rolled away, just narrowly missing a pair of swipes aimed at my head, running as I recovered from the roll. Looking around, I spotted a small set of power-ups that I could easily run to a speeding up and another recover if I needed that, but also one I hadn't seen as of yet, a magenta disc depicting 2 faded copies of a rider splitting off of the original. That was it, my ticket out of this fight. I quickly rolled under yet another swipe and made a beeline for the power-up, barely reaching it in time as another swipe from above had come to claim my head where it was moments ago as I punched the disc. Separation. I felt my body go numb before a sensation of being split open without the pain washed over me. I looked to my left and right and find a copy of myself on each end, looking to their left and right as I did before another set of copies formed next to them, and then another formed, and then another. Now there were 9 copies of me standing there facing the kamakiri, which was staring in confusion and, dare I say, fright? With this, I smirked at the monster and pulled the GGD completely out of the holster. What I didn't expect was the noise this would cause. Gashoon. That's right, all 9 copies of the GGD made the confirmation announcement at once. Oh God, it was loud. Holding the GGD close to my chest, I turned back to the kamakiri that was now ready for another round. Too bad it wouldn't see that. Alright, it's time to finish this. All 9 of me shouted as we turned the dials on our GGDs to the default position and then back to perfect puzzle. Kaimwaza. The familiar standby noise started playing out, but 9 times louder now as we holstered our GGDs. Dual Gashet. With that announcement, blue energy surrounded our legs as we got into a crouching stance. Perfect critical combo. Eat this. We cried out as we ran to the kamakiri as it charged us, but before we clashed, we jumped into the air and thrusted our glowing feet out in a flying kick shouting Q-Rensa Kiku, *. With that, all 9 attacks landed on the monstrous Grimm's thorax which shattered under the pressure, causing all 9 of us to crash into the ground and merging back into one as the power of the separation power-up was drained by the finisher. As I became one again, the Grimm exploded into the black mist that was its essence as I stood up and absorbed it. All clear. I looked to my level and EXP bar to see the bar was climbing as the essence was absorbed. Eventually, it filled up and my level became 15, but it didn't stop. It continued until it had filled up again with my level becoming 16 and still continued to do so until it finally stopped at 4% into level 17, at which point it played the game clear music followed by the familiar leveling up announcement. Level up! With that, I pumped my fists into each other cheered. Woo yeah! Level 17 baby! Now I just gotta find the girls. Just as I had said that, I noticed a flare shooting up from the northern end of the forest and my eyes went wide as I remembered Weiss having to be carried by RWBY away from here. Crap, that's not a good SI-. I started before a growl interrupted me. Damn it, I cursed as an Ursa Major lumbered out at me. I don't have time for this. I removed the GGD and turned the dial to Knockout Fighter before pressing the button with a cry of Daihenshin. Before the confirmation announcement could play. Duel up! Explosion hit! Knockout Fighter! With that confirmation, my pauldron shifted to my forearms as I placed the GGD back into the holster and cocked a fist back, unleashing a quick jab into the Ursa's abdomen which punctured it and disintegrated it into the black mist that formed its essence. I didn't bother seeing if my level increased, however, as I was looking towards the flare in contemplation. Just hang on. I'm on my way. I said to myself before running up to and punching the speed boost power-up. Speeding up! With the power-up now active, I made a mad dash through the clearing the Kamakiri had made to where the flare had come from. Whatever was going on down there. I just hope I'm not too late. To be continued.